Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with another mini Slimline card and some no-line watercoloring, which I do not do very often, mostly because I don't have the time or the patience. But there's something about this image that I was like, I just need to do some no-line watercoloring. So this is the new Sketch Iris. I was going to say, I don't know why I keep wanting to call it a lilac. It's not even remotely. Sketch Iris stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. I'm still planning on doing a release and review. Just life. Life is life. Anyway, I stamped this image onto Arches cold press watercolor paper using antique linen distress ink. This first little bit here, this is real time. Like, I'm nowhere near as fast as my videos make me out to be. Sometimes I really wish I could be that quick. I could get so much more done, but no. No line watercoloring is much more time intensive, but for some, it can definitely be like therapy, and I do enjoy it. I just, like I said, I just generally don't have the patience or the time, but sometimes it's worth it. And with an image like this, it was. This style of image is a really good one because there's just very clear and obvious sections to everything. Like each petal has its own section, the stems, like this is a good one to do no line with. Other images, it can get a lot more finicky, a lot more, you have to really stop and think and like figure out what you're going to do. Whereas one like this, you just kind of jump around. That's all I did. I just did one little section at a time because you don't want to work next to whatever you just painted because you want to let it dry. That's to keep all that definition. For my actual watercolors, I'm using my Mijello Mission Gold watercolor set that I haven't used in forever. I've had these for years. I've done several videos using them. I still love them. I have so many coloring options and not enough hours in the day or days in the week, yada yada. But I don't have like specific colors because one, it's just the palette, but I was literally just whatever was like on the actual palette. I wasn't really picking up from where like the pan of color was. And I just grabbed a purple because when I think irises, I immediately think purple, although like I planted, and hopefully they survived the crazy deep freeze we had. I planted some like beautiful peach ones last year that, and I really hope they come back. If not, I'll have to get more and plant them again because I love irises. And once they establish themselves, they do grow like weeds. Love it. Anyway, I jumped around and just painted. And like I said, like this image just works. Like you don't have to go back in and add a ton of detail. I honestly think it's pretty as it is. I can't resist. I'm very heavy-handed. I love seeing how people can leave more white space or like just lighter areas, more water, etc. I struggle with that. So I went in and kept kind of adding layers. After I did all the petals and everything, I did the greens. And I just went in and added layers. And then I ended up adding, with the purple, I actually added a bit of orange watercolor to it. I just muted it down. I just mixed it all up on a little palette there. You just figure it out as you go along. But that just kind of muted it down and actually made it a little more plummy, which I was very happy with. And then went back in and just added, that little bit of definition, just more layers. I'm working with 2 watercolor brushes. I did this, and this is, again, super sped up. This ended up taking me about an hour. I normally don't time myself, but this time I just knew because I had like the full amount of footage. But yeah, after I did the petals with the green, I actually added a tiny bit of red to it to, again, mute it down a bit. And then added that last little bit of definition, and then I was happy with it. And I'm going to let it dry, and then in a minute I'll die cut it with the coordinating wafer die. But first I'm going to work on my card front, which is Simon's Smooth 120 pound cardstock. I'm just quickly blending on, and quickly as in I edited this as well, but it was still quick in real life. Because I'm moving at like super speeds, but yeah, I'm not really this fast. But all I did was blend on just some Simon's ink. This is Willow. I blended that over the cardstock, which is my big blending brush. And then I couldn't not use this Spring Boho Circle Stencil again. I'm kind of obsessed with it. I really like it. So I layered that on top, and then I'm using the same ink. Just simple. That's why when I say like you don't have to have your blend, you know, your initial blend, like my background blend wasn't perfect. You know, it was a little splotchy. I didn't worry about it because I'm adding the stencil. That alone took care of it, you know, because you're not going to sit there and you're not going to notice it because of the pattern of the stencil. But I'm also going to add splatter. That also helps. So, you know, if you're not happy with a blended background you've created, add a stencil, add some splatter, you're good to go. No one's going to know, you know, it's generally salvageable. So set those aside. I die cut the main image with the coordinating wafer die. The sentiment, this is my oldie but goodie favorite Painted Thanks wafer die that I still reach for all the time. I die cut that from what was left over of that watercolor paper. Not something I would normally do. I would normally just, you know, reach for more white cardstock. But I like the look of it. You know, there's that little bit of texture to it, and it just, the color matched. Plus, speaking of color matching, I have this dark purple cardstock in my stash. I don't even have a label for it. It's just, it is extremely dark. Like, it is like eggplant purple. I'm stamping one of the sentiments from that sketch iris set with clear embossing ink, and I'm using Simon's new cream embossing powder. Again, not something I would normally like, oh, cream embossing powder, like, am I even going to use this? Yes, I am. It's perfect to go with things like watercolor paper, cream color cardstock, etc. Like, we all have that obsession with, like, we need, like, stark white cardstock, stark white embossing powder. No. Especially when it comes to watercolor. There's very few brands out there, very few, that are, like, white. And besides, having that, like, off-white, that cream color, it just works. So I used that, and I did it again on white cardstock with another sentiment. I heat embossed with that cream embossing powder, which doesn't look like anything, of course. But I did that just so I could ink blend the Willow ink over it, just to get things a little matchy-matchy. And then after I blended, I just used my microfiber cloth to remove, like, to rub over that embossed sentiment, so it removes the ink that's, like, sitting on the sentiment. It doesn't really show up in the video too well, but you can read it in real life. And that's all that matters. So I ink blended that, had trimmed it down, blended it a bit more. And then my card base is more of this, like, deep purple cardstock. I'll link Concord in Ninth's Eggplant is very close to this. Yeah, I love Concord in Ninth cardstock and Simon's cardstock. I have so many cardstocks. But anyway, I cut the cardstock to 6 1/4 inches by 6 1/2 inches. And then I scored it at 3 1/4 inches. So this will be a 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch mini slimline card. You could keep things easier and just do 6 inches by 3 inches, whatever floats your boat. I like adding that extra 1/4 inch because the envelope is 6 1/2 by 3 1/2. So having that little extra bit of space, just, I like it. So I did all that, and then I realized after all of this that the panel I blended did the stencil on, I had also cut to 6 1/4 by 3 1/4. I don't know why I did that, so I trimmed it down because I wanted it smaller than my card base, so I just turned it down to 6 by 3. So I did that, and then on the inside of this card base, I used scrap paper just to mask off where the fold is, and I'm going to use that Spring Boho circle stencil again, of course. So I lined that up, held it in place with washi tape, and I'm just blending Simon's deep purple ink over this. You can actually see this somewhat in the video. Photos, just, I had the hardest time because when you're dealing with really dark purples, my camera interprets it as black in a sense, and it's just hard. But you can kind of see how it's, you know, the pattern's carrying on the inside. And then I'm going to do the envelope too, because Simon did release some purple color envelopes, but I think they're the blue violet shade. They don't match to what I'm doing. They had too much of a blue to them. So I just took one of Simon's white mini slimline envelopes and blended that deep purple ink over it. Again, it wasn't too perfect with the blending. And then blended it over the stencil as well. Not too heavy-handed because I didn't want the envelope to be too dark. But I just wanted that purple color and that stencil, and it just makes me happy. So I've got my card base done. I'm going to adhere my sentiment. And then once the sentiment's adhered, the inside's technically done. The card front, I am going to adhere the iris just with craft tacky glue. And then before I add my sentiments, this is when I'm going to add splatter. I was kind of like, do I just want to splatter just the main image? Do I want to splatter the background? Why not splatter both? So put it in my splat box, and I'm going to do my same old, same old. I'm going to splatter with Ranger Perfect Pearl Powder. So I just have my little plastic palette here, and I just grab a little bit of Perfect Pearl Powder, use a wet brush, splatter, 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 splatter. It just gives it that beautiful shimmer I love. So I splattered it all over my little card front. And then I'm going to add a little bit of Picket Fence Distress Paint. Add some water to that. Mix it in with the shimmer, because why not? And use it all up, and you can never have enough, in my opinion. So splattered all of that. Let that dry. Then I'm going to adhere my sentiments, my die cut sentiment, and the one I heat emboss. So I'm just going to adhere those with that craft tacky glue. Decided not to pop them up. Shocking, I know. So I adhered those to the card front. And then the card front I'm going to adhere with Simon's Big Mama foam tape, which I always like to say is, the Big Mama is referring to the size of the roll. The foam tape itself is thin. That's why I like it so much, because it's only about a 1/16 of an inch versus most foam tapes are about an 1/8 of an inch. So this gives me my little bit of dimension without making things too bulky. And the roll itself, though, is huge. Like, that's why they call it Big Mama, because it's massive. So I did that. And then at the very end here, I'm adding, of course, a few little pearls from my stash. These were Studio Caudia ones. I don't think they're available anymore. As I'm doing my supplies, I'm realizing this, but I'm linking to somewhat similars. Yeah, that's the best I can do. So that's my card and envelope for the moment. As always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will post a supply list. I'll link to everything I used. You can check it out in the description box below the video, as well as on my blog, which is also linked directly below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.